Madam, are you sure you want me to cancel the flight ticket to go abroad with Chairman Ren 7 days later? A puzzled voice came from the microphone. Elizabeth Lynn stood on the balcony, glancing at the withered tree below, and made a decision. Book me a ticket to return to my parents' house on the same day, and book Rowena a ticket to go abroad on the same day. 7 days later, I will personally send them abroad to settle down, then fly back to my parents' house. The secretary on the other end of the phone was slightly taken aback. Rowena is the third party in Madam's marriage. What does she intend to do? Though she was confused, she still nodded. All right, ma'am. Elizabeth hung up the phone. In the living room, Benjamin stood up impatiently as Elizabeth walked in. Have you thought it over? Rowena is still waiting for my reply. 10 minutes ago, Elizabeth had just finished cooking. As soon as Benjamin returned home, he laid everything on the table with her. I don't want to hide it from you anymore. Rowena actually lives in the neighborhood next door. She has been with me for 9 years. I owe her a lot. And this time when I move abroad, I must take her with me. Elizabeth had just set the dishes on the table, and the smile at the corner of her mouth instantly froze. In fact, this is not the first time Benjamin has proposed to take Rowena abroad to settle down. The first time he suggested it, Elizabeth went into a hysterical rage, smashing the entire living room and cursing him for having the heart to make such a request. The second time he proposed it, Elizabeth collapsed and slapped Benjamin across the face, leaving home for 7 days. During those 7 days, Benjamin didn't make a single phone call. This time, Elizabeth decided to support them. I had my secretary book her a plane ticket. You two will go together. Finally come to your senses? Benjamin's furrowed handsome face relaxed, and his thin lips slowly curled into a smile. Elizabeth lowered her gaze and picked up a grain of rice, a wave of bitterness rising within her. Didn't you say you were worried about her living alone in the country? She's naive and easily deceived. Perhaps it was the openness of the conversation. Benjamin decided to drop the pretense, mentioning Rowena. A smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Rowena is actually more suitable to be taken home as a wife than you. But you were lucky to have the advantage, knowing me a few years before her. Once you go abroad, you should learn from her how to please a man. As he finished speaking, Benjamin's phone vibrated, and he walked to the balcony to take the call. Elizabeth looked at his back, her gaze dimming as she lowered her eyes. She had always thought that knowing Benjamin was her greatest fortune. In her first year of high school, Benjamin wrote her 99 love letters to pursue her. When their high school romance was discovered, Benjamin brought his parents to her home. He knelt before her parents, crying and bowing dozens of times, begging them to bless their relationship. After the college entrance examination, when checking her scores, she had done poorly. Benjamin performed exceptionally well but was not happy at all. He secretly gave up a prestigious university to accompany her to a regular undergraduate program. And she did not let down Benjamin. When Benjamin went north to start a business, she stubbornly married him without a house or a car, wholeheartedly assisting him in his entrepreneurial journey. After Benjamin failed in business for 3 consecutive years, she accompanied him from their neighborhood to a damp basement, living on pickled vegetables and noodles for quite a long time. Later, Benjamin achieved success in his business. He proudly shared their photos on social media, gave her 80% of the company's shares, and organized a grand wedding for her. At the wedding, he looked at her, overwhelmed with emotion, and choked up. Wife, without your support, there would be no me today. I will love you forever. She has remembered these words until now. But just a month ago, she suddenly discovered Benjamin had a secret affair. The girl's name is Rowena. She is Benjamin S. Jr. from university. In the years after graduation, the two kept in touch, chatting every day. Every year on her birthday, Benjamin would carefully prepare gifts for her, and he would also prepare one for Rowena. In fact, the gifts that Benjamin prepared for Rowena were often much more expensive than those for her. During the time when Benjamin was extremely busy with his startup, he would still take 1 day each week to spend with Rowena. On the day they were having their wedding ceremony again, Rowena also came. She wore a low-key short wedding dress, with a loose suit jacket over it, and that evening posted a social media update. accompanying you in another identity. This social media update was liked by Benjamin. The next morning, Benjamin woke up. Elizabeth flipped the phone to the chat page between him and Rowena and questioned him hysterically. How many years have you been in frequent contact? 8 years? Or 9 years? Without even mentioning names, Benjamin already knew who it was. He had no guilt whatsoever. Rowena likes me. She has never thought of interfering in my marriage. I have kept in touch with her for 9 years. Is there a problem? Elizabeth's eyes were bloodshot, staring incredulously at the man before her. You are cheating. You have betrayed me. Elizabeth's voice was hoarse, and if listened to closely, it revealed endless pain. Benjamin furrowed his brow, his thin lips slightly parted, his voice filled with disdain and accusation. Elizabeth, after I became successful in my career, you have been relying on me at home, and after trying for 3 years, you still can't get pregnant. Don't you think you are a negligent wife? You should put yourself in my shoes. I am no longer the penniless ruffian I once was. Now I have 3 companies under my name and financial freedom. I only need to support one woman. She never provokes you. I usually respect and understand you. What more could you possibly want? With just a few words, Elizabeth fell silent. The reason she hasn't worked these past few years is that she accompanied Benjamin during the years of starting his business, and her relentless efforts led to irreversible damage to her health. At that time, when he first started reaching out to clients, the young Benjamin was full of pride, but his negotiation skills were lacking, and no one was willing to give him a chance. It was her, toasting clients with one drink after another, bending down and lowering her head, drinking to the point of gastrointestinal bleeding just to secure one order after another. The year he succeeded in his business, her health was completely ruined. She had to be hospitalized for over half a year due to amenorrhea. Now, he blames her for resting at home to recover instead of going to work. Elizabeth quietly returned to the bedroom, tore up today's pregnancy test report, and threw it into the trash can. That night, Elizabeth couldn't sleep again. She could only rely on medication to barely sleep for 2 hours. From that day on, they argued almost every day. Just half a month ago, Benjamin proposed to open a branch overseas, intending to settle abroad. Elizabeth originally wanted to use this opportunity to separate Benjamin and Rowena. Little did she know, Benjamin instead proposed to take Rowena with him abroad. Today, Benjamin brought this up for the 3rd time. Elizabeth finally felt dead inside. She casually took a few bites of her meal, her peripheral vision once again glancing towards the balcony. Benjamin was still on the phone, a hint of affection at the corner of his mouth. Elizabeth got up and walked to the whiteboard in the living room, writing down a 7. The next morning, Elizabeth woke up very early. She woke up and went to consult a lawyer about the divorce. Miss Lin, if Chairman Ren is willing to sign the divorce agreement, that would be the best outcome. If he is unwilling, you can live separately for a year, and then the chances of winning the divorce lawsuit will be very high. But are you sure you want a divorce? Lawyer Lee was a temporary choice made by Elizabeth. When Lawyer Lee learned that Elizabeth wanted to divorce Benjamin, he was somewhat surprised. In the eyes of others, Benjamin was attentive to Elizabeth, keeping everything around him clean and tidy, with no trace of any other woman. Elizabeth lowered her eyelashes, a hint of sorrow rising in her watery eyes. He has someone else. The other party fell silent for a few seconds and said sorry. Elizabeth continued, send me the divorce agreement, and I will sign it and mail it abroad. He will land on a plane in 7 days, and I will arrange for someone to deliver it to him for signing at the first opportunity. Just after hanging up the phone, Elizabeth noticed Benjamin standing at the bedroom door. His gaze fell on Elizabeth, his expression not good. What were you just saying? What divorce agreement? Elizabeth didn't expect Benjamin to overhear. She clutched her phone, casually finding a reason to explain. I'm on the phone with a friend. She's been thinking about getting a divorce these past few days. Benjamin didn't think much of it. He never believed that Elizabeth would actually leave him, nor did he think that the friend Elizabeth mentioned was actually her. So, he took out his phone to show Elizabeth photos of the villa. I've bought a villa abroad. 2 buildings. We'll live in the larger one, and the smaller one will be for Rowena. For the property deeds of the 2 villas, I only wrote her name. Don't think you can stop me. She has been with me for so many years. I have to show my appreciation. Elizabeth felt a tremor in her heart. So, are you saying she doesn't own a single villa? You said she doesn't seek anything, yet now both villas are registered solely in her name. During those years when you were starting your business, I helped you a lot. Can you really live with yourself after doing this? Benjamin glanced at Elizabeth with dissatisfaction and said in a low voice, I have given you enough. You should be content. When I wired the money to buy these 2 villas, she said beside me that she had no properties under her name. She only said one sentence. It was because I felt sorry for her that I gave it to her, not because she asked for it. Elizabeth felt utterly disheartened, only finding it extremely laughable. She still wanted to speak, when a noise came from the doorway. The 2 looked over, Rowena peeking her head out from the door. She was wearing a white dress, holding 2 large shopping bags from the supermarket. The girl had fair and tender skin, adorned with a delicate and elegant makeup. It was evident that she was in great condition. A month ago, Elizabeth only found out while browsing through the chat history. After achieving success in his career, Benjamin would privately transfer 50,000 yuan to Rowena every month. Every time, Benjamin would say, Take it. This is what I owe you. I can't let you get nothing by following me. What a pity. She showed up earlier than you, and her luck is better than yours. Elizabeth locked eyes with Rowena in midair, the girl's eyes full of pride. Although her outfit was the style of a delicate white moonlight, her exquisite little face bore 5 words, I'm here to show off. Elizabeth furrowed her brows at Benjamin, her expression very poor. Why is she here? Didn't I tell you that this house doesn't allow her to step in even one step? Benjamin turned his head away somewhat guiltily. Rowena is celebrating her birthday today. You agreed to let her go abroad. She wants to come over and cook a meal to thank you. After a pause, he looked at Elizabeth with dissatisfaction and accused her. She took the initiative to show you kindness. Don't be ungrateful. She has suffered so much over the years. And it's nothing. Elizabeth looked at the 7 on the whiteboard, took a deep breath, and suppressed her disgust as she said, Talk to Rowena for me. I don't eat coriander, so tell her not to put it in the food. The smile on Rowena's face froze. Why does it feel like she is treating him as a servant when she says that? Rowena entered the kitchen and prepared 4 dishes and a soup. She didn't serve it out but poked her head out to wave at Elizabeth. Elizabeth, can you help me serve the dishes? Elizabeth walked into the kitchen and glanced at the dishes on the table. 4 dishes and a soup, all garnished with coriander. Beside her, Rowena was touching up her makeup with a light-colored lipstick, painting her rosy lips to look devoid of color. She looked at Elizabeth with haughty, watery eyes. Benjamin must be very distressed to see me working so hard. He can't bear to see me exhausted. Elizabeth glanced at her somewhat haggard makeup. Benjamin truly felt heartbroken for Rowena. These days, Benjamin always loved to tell her, Rowena has given so much for me. You've only simply accompanied me in starting a business. At first, when she heard Benjamin say these words, she would explain a few things, but now she didn't want to say anything at all. Are you tired of pretending to be weak and playing the victim every day? Rowena let out a cold snort, picking up the stew she had made, looking disdainfully at Elizabeth. Not tired at all. It's much better than you exhausting yourself for him, giving everything, only to be despised by him. If I were you, I would divorce Benjamin right now. Elizabeth looked coldly, her arms crossed. Have you been in the cesspool for too long, wanting to rise up? Rowena put down the soup in her hands, her arms crossed. Having been favored by Benjamin for years, she naturally exuded confidence and indifference. To be honest, aside from not being his legal wife, I am more suited to be his wife in every other aspect. I have known Benjamin for 9 years, and we have been in contact every day during these 9 years. He tells me everything that happens to him right away. I know all his joys and sorrows, and I also know the payment password for his phone, 198,111. If you don't believe it, you can try it. Elizabeth was momentarily stunned. After 12 years of being in love, Benjamin had never told her the payment password. In name, she was the legitimate wife, But Benjamin had given the rights of the legitimate wife to Rowena. Are you done? Seeing her frown, Rowena smirked with satisfaction. Can you tolerate your husband cheating? Are you finished? Elizabeth asked once more. Rowena was taken aback for a moment, suddenly not understanding what Elizabeth was trying to do. But she still wanted to provoke Elizabeth. I won't leave him. If you go abroad, I will go abroad too. I'll just cling to Benjamin. After all, he loves me. With me around, your marriage won't be happy. After Rowena finished speaking, Elizabeth put down the plate and squinted her eyes. Are you done? Then it's my turn to speak. Here's a piece of advice. If you're going to be a mistress, at least be discreet and stop being so noisy. As soon as she finished speaking, Elizabeth raised her hand and slapped Rowena so hard that her face twisted. Rowena twisted her ankle and bumped into the soup on the table, spilling it all over herself, causing her to scream in pain. It's so hot! Hearing the commotion, Benjamin rushed into the kitchen. What happened? Rowena. Rowena slightly tilted her head back, revealing her right cheek that was red from being slapped and her left hand that was swollen and hot, hatefully pointing at the cold-faced Elizabeth. Husband. She slapped me and splashed soup on me. Husband? Elizabeth held back her disgust. Benjamin is her husband. So who is Elizabeth's husband? Benjamin painfully picked up Rowena from the ground, looking at Elizabeth with a very poor expression. Apologized to Rowena. Elizabeth furrowed her brows. Quite a bit of hot soup had splashed onto her as well, and her face was pale. Aren't you going to ask what just happened? Benjamin grimaced, looking at the disheveled Rowena with concern. She's a good girl, following me for so many years without a title. How bad could she be? How could she possibly provoke you? Elizabeth quietly stared at him, a trace of sorrow rising in her heart. Back in school, she was falsely accused of stealing money by a jealous classmate. The homeroom teacher called her in for questioning. It was Benjamin who rushed into the office to defend her. Teacher, Elizabeth is a very good girl. She never speaks up when she's wronged. How bad could she be? How could she possibly steal money? But now, similar words. Benjamin is not standing up for her, but for another person. Apologies are fine, but I won't allow her to follow us abroad to settle down. In a single sentence, Rowena gritted her teeth and glared at her. Why should it be you? It's not like you have the final say. Benjamin's expression darkened. Don't make me angry. Elizabeth's eyes reddened. She slightly tilted her head back to prevent the tears from falling. Don't force me to hire a lawyer to announce and expose your relationship with Rowena. Benjamin's handsome face darkened. After a long while, he pressed his lips together. Forget it. I forgive you this time, but it won't happen again. With that, he carried Rowena to the living room sofa and found her a burn ointment. As Elizabeth left the kitchen, she caught a glimpse of the affectionate couple and walked upstairs to the master bedroom. Taking advantage of Benjamin not being around, Elizabeth picked up his phone. She opened the chat page, casually entered an amount, and typed in the password. Transfer successful. Elizabeth paused for a moment, deleted the traces, and put Benjamin's phone back in place. Her husband's payment password required another woman to inform her. How ironic. Downstairs, Benjamin is applying a hot towel to Rowena's right cheek, while also putting ointment on her burned hand. Rowena's watery eyes turned red, feeling wronged and choked up. I was the one who got slapped. She feels no guilt at all. How can she be so cruel? Husband, you don't even stand up for me. Why don't you slap her too? Benjamin's face was not good, patiently coaxing her. Think about it. If she gets angry and changes her mind about letting you go abroad with us, what will happen then? I'm doing this for you too. Rowena lowered her gaze, tentatively asking, all right, but it's my birthday tonight. You have to celebrate with me, okay, little ancestor. Benjamin lowered his head and affectionately kissed her lips. The two didn't notice that Elizabeth was standing on the second floor, looking down at the ambiguous couple. After a while, Benjamin walked into the master bedroom. He looked very pale and said Rowena had severe burns and needed to be taken to the hospital immediately. Elizabeth didn't expose him. Once Benjamin left, Elizabeth scrolled through the chat history. On this day every year in the past, Benjamin always said there was something going on at the company. Before going to bed, Elizabeth erased the 7 on the whiteboard and wrote 6. 6 days. The next morning, Elizabeth woke up to find that Benjamin had already returned. He had dark circles under his eyes, clearly having overindulged the night before. While Elizabeth was having breakfast, Benjamin looked at the words on the whiteboard, frowning. "What does 6 mean?" Elizabeth calmly replied, "There are only 6 days left before going abroad. In 6 days, she will be able to end this 12-year relationship. There are 6 days left for her to say goodbye to him." Benjamin always felt something was off, but before he could think about it, the phone rang. As Benjamin went out, Elizabeth began to pack her bags. As for this house, Benjamin doesn't plan to sell it after going abroad. Elizabeth packed her things neatly and sent them back to her parents' house. As for the gifts Benjamin gave her, she didn't take any. After finishing all this, it was already afternoon, and there was a commotion at the door. Elizabeth turned her head slightly, and Rowena was standing proudly behind Benjamin with a suitcase in her hand. Elizabeth could roughly guess what the two wanted to do. She frowned slightly, not angry, and calmly said, "The bedroom next to the master bedroom is big. Let her stay there." After all, she had already sent all her things away. This is no longer her home. Benjamin didn't expect Elizabeth to be so easy to talk to. Just as he felt something was off, Rowena tugged at his sleeve and smiled sweetly. "Honey, take me upstairs." After settling Rowena, Benjamin walked back to the master bedroom. The master bedroom was mostly empty. All of Elizabeth's things were gone. Benjamin furrowed his brow, feeling somewhat out of place. "Where are your things?" Elizabeth sat on the edge of the bed, too lazy to look at him. "I had the delivery guy send them abroad. That way, I won't have to spend money buying clothes later." Benjamin noticed the jewelry box on the table. "The items above are the gifts he has given to Elizabeth over the years." "The gift I gave you. Why haven't you sent it away?" Elizabeth scratched her head. She forgot to throw it in the trash can. "I forgot. I'll send it tomorrow." Benjamin furrowed his brow and said coldly, "Don't bring it up later. Don't come looking for me to compensate you for the gift. I have neither time nor money to waste on you." Elizabeth pressed her lips together and said nothing. After finishing dinner, Benjamin took out 2 car keys. He first handed the Benz car key to Elizabeth. "I bought the car a month ago. When I get there, this Benz will be for you." Elizabeth received it, her face showing no sign of happiness. "What about mine, husband?" Rowena pouted and acted cute. Benjamin took out the McLaren car key from his pocket and lightly scratched her face. "You won't be left out. I know you like this sports car." Rowena received the car key and gave Elizabeth a proud smile. Elizabeth's face turned slightly cold. Buying her a Benz worth $500,000. Buying Rowena a McLaren worth $2 million. It seems that a month ago, Benjamin had already made plans. "Benz is quite nice." "Elizabeth, why do you look so unhappy?" "I actually enjoy driving a Benz." Rowena smirked, deliberately showing an envious expression. "McLaren is too ostentatious. I prefer something more low-key." Elizabeth furrowed her brow and directly handed the Benz car keys to Rowena. "Since you like it, you can have it." After all, the part she was entitled to in the divorce agreement was already written down. Elizabeth graciously relinquished the luxury car, and Benjamin looked at Elizabeth with satisfaction. In the past, when faced with such situations, Elizabeth would cause a scene. She would smash things and accuse him of being unfaithful. Nowadays, Elizabeth is so magnanimous. It seems she has really come to terms with it. The current Elizabeth is exactly what he wanted. 3 days later, Elizabeth received a phone call. "Miss Lin, the birthday gift you customized 3 months ago is ready. When will you come to pick it up?" Elizabeth furrowed her brow. It was the birthday gift she had prepared for Benjamin. A high-end custom watch. In order to have it ready for Benjamin's birthday in 2 days, she had specifically paid extra to have the workers finish it. But now, it was unnecessary. "Just donate it." "Huh?" On the other end of the line, the staff was a bit confused. "I want a divorce. Help me donate." "Thank you," Elizabeth calmly said. The clerk was silent for a few seconds, repeatedly apologizing. Elizabeth hung up the phone and took a taxi to the hospital. In the gynecology outpatient clinic, the attending physician was Elizabeth's friend Fiona. She glanced behind Elizabeth but did not see Benjamin. In the past, when you came to the hospital, no matter how busy Benjamin was with work, he would drop everything to accompany you. But in the last 2 years, when he has had less work, he hasn't accompanied you anymore? Elizabeth sat down, smiled bitterly, and reluctantly touched her belly. Fiona, help me prepare for the abortion surgery. Are you crazy? Fiona stared wide-eyed, thinking it was Elizabeth throwing a tantrum. You can be upset all you want, but after trying for 3 years to get pregnant, finally being pregnant with a healthy fetus, why would you want to lose it? Elizabeth looked at her friend in front of her, not intending to hide anything from her. I'm planning to get a divorce. This marriage is exhausting me. Elizabeth spoke with a voice that still carried a hint of choking emotion. Fiona probably guessed what was going on. She quickly filled out the pregnancy surgery form and accompanied Elizabeth into the operating room. 2 hours later, Elizabeth returned home. In the living room, Benjamin had a charming smile on his face, affectionately rubbing Rowena's belly. Rowena, you really are my lucky star. Elizabeth has been trying to conceive for 3 years without success. And now just 1 month in, you've made me a dad. Rowena's small face was full of charm as she said proudly, it seems that it's not the hoe that's the problem, but the piece of land. Elizabeth paused in her movement to change shoes. Her face was pale as she quietly walked through the living room and went upstairs. Benjamin followed in behind her, glancing at Elizabeth without noticing her poor complexion, and coldly said, Rowena is pregnant. You don't have to bear such a great pressure to conceive anymore. I also promised her that I would devote all my fatherly love to raising this child, and I won't spare a single cent of the money that needs to be spent. After a pause, Benjamin's gaze fell on Elizabeth's belly. If you want to blame someone, blame your stomach for being unreliable. Elizabeth sat on the edge of the bed, looking up at the man in front of her, her pale lips slightly parted. If both Rowena and I were pregnant at the same time, would you prefer her child? Benjamin furrowed his brow. He didn't understand why Elizabeth would ask this question. Anyway, she probably won't get pregnant, so he simply decided not to deceive her. I actually just want Rowena to give birth. If you both get pregnant, I will definitely favor her child. As soon as the words were spoken, Elizabeth turned pale. She lowered her head and touched her belly. All feelings of guilt vanished. By the way, my birthday is in 2 days. Before going abroad, I need to invite my brothers to celebrate and inform them about Rowena's pregnancy. You should come too. Benjamin leaned against the door, looking at Elizabeth. Elizabeth had long anticipated that he would do this. Hearing him say that, her heart ached for a moment. If that's the case, why should I go? Benjamin furrowed his brow. If you don't go, they will think Rowena is scheming, and I don't want her to be misunderstood by everyone. A complex emotion surfaced on Elizabeth's face, self-mockery, sorrow, disappointment, and despair. I won't go. Since ancient times, a legitimate wife has never supported a concubine. Benjamin's handsome face tightened slightly. After a moment, he slowly said, if you go, I will unconditionally grant you one request. Elizabeth lowered her watery eyes. Okay, just sign for me when the time comes. Signing the divorce agreement. 2 days later, Benjamin's birthday party. Benjamin's brothers and business partners all came. Benjamin led Rowena to the center of the crowd. He cleared his throat, and the surroundings fell silent. Today, taking advantage of my birthday, I want to announce some good news to everyone. Rowena is pregnant. I'm going to be a father. Thanks to her for helping me realize the dream of a family of 3. As soon as he finished speaking, many who knew Elizabeth instantly turned their heads to look at Elizabeth, who was sitting in the corner. Elizabeth kept her head down and said nothing, but the redness around her eyes ultimately betrayed her emotions. 3 years ago, after Benjamin successfully started his business, he took the initiative to propose to hold a wedding for her. She doesn't want to show off, but Benjamin still insists on holding the event. Wife, I can't let you envy other women. You've suffered so much with me for so many years. Now that I'm doing better, I will definitely give you what you deserve. That day on the wedding stage, Benjamin looked at her, his handsome face full of joy. "Wife, we are now a family of 2. I hope that before long, you can help me have a baby, so that our family of 3 can live happily together." Therefore, after the wedding, she stayed at home to recuperate and actively prepare for pregnancy. Now, he happily tells others that he has a child, but the other half is not her. Most people present basically know that Elizabeth is the legitimate wife. However, many people were quick to send their congratulations. "Congratulations. You have a precious son. Rowena is truly fortunate to have met Chairman Ren, choosing a good tree to rest upon." There were also quite a few real men who curled their lips, clearly disapproving of Benjamin's actions. "Elizabeth begged me for a long time to help Benjamin secure the collaboration, following me from one drinking session to another. Yes. The most intense time was when Elizabeth drank 7 sessions in one day. My wife is still in awe of her." The gathering became lively again. Some sang, while others played cards. Elizabeth was sitting in the corner, her head down, playing on her mobile phone. Without a word, Rowena looked around and noticed Elizabeth in the corner. She slowly walked over to her, supporting her belly. "Elizabeth, bring me a cup of warm water. My baby is thirsty." Elizabeth glanced up at Rowena and caught the smugness in her eyes. Too lazy to respond. "No time. Busy." Rowena watched her playing a game, suddenly leaned in, and hatched a wicked idea. "What if you can't get pregnant with Benjamin's child, but suddenly get pregnant with another man's child? Do you think Benjamin would be resolute and divorce you, then support me to take your place?" Elizabeth paused her gaming, squinting her eyes. "You can try, but if you dare, I'll kick your stomach until you miscarry." Rowena stuck out her tongue and smiled faintly. "I was just joking. Why are you so angry?" Elizabeth glared at her coldly, not wanting to respond. She had already done what she promised Benjamin and got up to walk towards the exit of the private room, but she didn't notice that at the moment she turned around, Rowena immediately picked up her phone to send a message. "She's about to leave. Make your move." Elizabeth walked out of the private room, planning to use the restroom before getting a taxi. Just a few steps in, a door to a private room suddenly swung open from the inside. A man's hand reached out, directly pulling Elizabeth into the room, and she fell heavily to the ground. She screamed in alarm. "Who are you?" Elizabeth let out a scream, and another man quickly turned the volume of the booth to maximum. The music instantly drowned out Elizabeth's cries for help. Elizabeth looked up in terror. There were 6 men in the booth, all looking at her with malicious intent, their gazes raw and terrifying. "A beautiful woman. A real gem. I heard she's the boss's woman. Today we get to enjoy some fine goods. Let's make a move." Several men quickly reached out towards Elizabeth. She desperately tried to dodge, but the man's lewd hand had already touched her body. She suddenly remembered Rowena's words. "Rowena gave you how much money? I will give you double." "Pa, bitch. I don't want more money today. I just want to eat something good." The red-haired man in the lead grabbed Elizabeth's clothes and tore them apart forcefully. Elizabeth, the collar was torn open, and the man's hand moved towards her neck. Fear appeared on her face, and a sense of despair arose. Just as her pants were about to be taken off, Elizabeth quickly grabbed the wine bottle from the table and threw it at the red-haired man. Bang! The red-haired man was shot in the head, and the other 5 stopped moving, raising their fists to strike Elizabeth. "Bitch! I'll kill you today." Elizabeth was beaten down, curling up on the ground. The last shred of survival instinct made her get up again, grabbing the wine bottle by her feet and throwing it at the group. The 6 dodged and stepped back. This time Elizabeth was clever, seizing the chance to run outside. Seeing this, the 6 dared not pursue. Elizabeth directly pushed open the reserved private room of Benjamin. She glanced around, her gaze landing on Rowena in the corner, and walked over to her. Rowena met Elizabeth, who had a bruised face and tattered clothes. A flash of panic crossed her eyes, and thinking of something, she screamed loudly, "Benjamin!" As soon as she finished speaking, Elizabeth had already walked up to her, squinting her eyes and kicking her in the stomach. Rowena was heavily kicked to the ground, and she cried out in pain, "Benjamin, save me!" Elizabeth lifted her foot and kicked her in the stomach again. Have I ever told you that if you dare to lay a hand on me, I will kick your child out? I don't know what you're saying. Rowena huddled on the ground in fear. Her face contorted in pain as she clutched her stomach in agony. The people around instantly fell silent, all turning to look. Benjamin hurriedly rushed forward, helping Rowena up and shielding her behind him. In the next moment, he angrily kicked Elizabeth in the stomach. Are you out of your mind? She's pregnant and you still kick her? Elizabeth, you are truly vicious. Elizabeth crashed heavily to the ground. Having just undergone an abortion, she was pale with pain. Looking up at, I am malicious. Why don't you ask her what she did to me? Rowena lowered her head, feeling guilty and just about to find another excuse. Benjamin suddenly said in a deep voice, Enough! I don't need to ask at all. With a woman like you, who would go to any lengths for business, what wouldn't you do? These words struck Elizabeth like a thunderclap in her ears. Did Benjamin just say she would go to any lengths? Said she would sell herself for business? He clearly knew that she had almost been drugged and deceived by a malicious boss while accompanying clients to help him. At that time, Benjamin arrived just in time. The boss, who lost face, angrily scolded her, saying she would do anything for business, even slandering her by suggesting she would sell herself for it. Benjamin stood up for her then, but now, he has turned those words into a blade that pierces her. Elizabeth still wanted to speak, but Benjamin was quicker to pick up Rowena and hurriedly took her to the hospital. The crowd quickly dispersed, leaving only Elizabeth alone in the private room. She looked at herself in the mirror. Her blouse was torn at the collar, her makeup was smudged, her face and hands were bruised, and her hair was a mess. If only Benjamin had looked at her properly, he would have noticed that she had almost been bullied. But his heart was entirely with Rowena. After a long time, Elizabeth finally got up, intending to go home. She had barely taken 2 steps when a stream of blood flowed from between her legs. For 2 consecutive days, Benjamin did not come back. With only 1 day left before going abroad, Benjamin returned with Rowena. Rowena looked pale, as if she had been seriously injured. Upon closer inspection, it was actually makeup that created the appearance. Benjamin looked at Elizabeth, who was sitting on the sofa, and reproached her. You should be grateful that the child is safe. Otherwise, we would definitely be getting a divorce. Rowena has a good heart. She said she forgave you, but I also promised her, after going abroad, you live in a small villa, and the big villa is for me and Rowena. Elizabeth quietly watched TV, turning her head to look at Benjamin. If you found out that the person you love is a liar, would you still love her? Benjamin furrowed his brow. He didn't understand why Elizabeth suddenly asked this. Of course I wouldn't love her, but how could I possibly fall in love with a liar? Rowena is kind-hearted. I would only love women like her. Elizabeth lowered her gaze, concealing her feelings of loss. Benjamin, we once had feelings for each other, but there will be none in the future. I hope that tomorrow morning, you can fulfill my last wish. Help her sign the divorce agreement. Benjamin furrowed his brow as he looked at Elizabeth. Why did he feel that Elizabeth was saying these words as if it were a farewell? But they were clearly flying abroad together in the afternoon. All right. No need to say any more nonsense. Let's pack up and head to the airport. 2 hours later, at the airport, Benjamin and Rowena walked side by side in front. The two of them close like a married couple. Elizabeth walked alone behind the two of them. As they were heading to security, Elizabeth glanced at Benjamin. You are in first class. I am in economy class. You go through the first class security lane and wait in the lounge. I will wait at the boarding gate. Benjamin furrowed his brow, confused. What's the point of saving that little money? It's not like we're short on a few thousand. Elizabeth said nothing, just waved her hand at him. Goodbye, Benjamin. We will never see each other again in this lifetime. Just as Benjamin was about to suggest upgrading her, Rowena pulled him away first. Let's go. Baby is hungry. We need to hurry to security and grab something to eat in the lounge. After the two passed through security, Elizabeth turned and walked towards the domestic security channel. Soon, she boarded the flight back to her parents' home. The next morning, the flight abroad finally landed. After Benjamin got off the plane, he didn't see Elizabeth. He dialed her number, but the cold female voice informed him that the phone was turned off. What's wrong with her? Why is she throwing a tantrum at this time? It's all my fault for spoiling him too much. With no other choice, Benjamin could only leave the airport first. Soon, a man at the arrival gate saw Benjamin. He glanced down at the screen showing Benjamin's photo and confirmed it was him. The man stepped forward and handed over the folder. Chairman Ren, Miss Lin wants you to help her sign here. Benjamin opened the folder and saw the 5 words on top. His thick brows furrowing. Divorce agreement? Benjamin glanced at the signature on the divorce agreement. He touched it, confirming again that this was Elizabeth's handwriting. It was neither a forgery nor a proxy signature. Benjamin grimaced as he crumpled the divorce agreement into a ball and angrily threw it on the ground. He did not believe that Elizabeth really wanted a divorce. She probably doesn't want Rowena to come and settle down, throwing a tantrum like a child. After all, Elizabeth has loved him for 12 years, invested so much in him, and surely wouldn't dare to leave him easily. Where is she? Where is she? How long is she going to throw a tantrum? The man sighed and shook his head. I'm not sure. Miss Lin didn't tell me her whereabouts. Benjamin coldly dialed the secretary's phone. You contact her now and tell her to stop acting up. I won't coax her. If she keeps making a scene, I will agree to sign the divorce papers. And when she comes crying to me, I won't pay her any mind. On the other end of the phone, the secretary fell silent for a few seconds, looking troubled. Chairman Ren, your wife called yesterday afternoon at 3 o'clock. She specifically instructed me not to contact her regarding Chairman Ren matters, unless you are willing to agree to sign the divorce. 3 o'clock in the afternoon? Benjamin frowned, catching this key piece of information. In other words, she didn't get on the plane. Benjamin looked around the vast airport, confirming he didn't see Elizabeth's figure, and soon fell into deep thought. Half an hour later, on the way to the new villa, Rowena turned her head to look at Benjamin beside her. The man's face was ashen, his thick brows furrowed. He was clearly very angry about Elizabeth not coming abroad. Rowena was overjoyed inside. She averted her gaze, her small face showing a hint of worry. Why don't we book an air ticket back home now to find Elizabeth? Benjamin let out a cold snort. I'll ignore her for a few days. She'll come back begging me. In the following days, the servants unpacked the express deliveries sent from home and placed them in the villa. The branch office hadn't opened yet, so Benjamin took the opportunity to take Rowena on a trip. On the first day, they went skiing and took couple photos. On the second day, they went camping. Rowena fed Benjamin grilled skewers. On the third day, they went to see the aurora. And in the video, Benjamin was considerate of Rowena at every turn. In the following 3 days, they went on a shopping spree, and Rowena spent a total of $1 million over 3 days. Benjamin rarely posts social dynamics. It seems he was trying to annoy Elizabeth by posting social dynamics frantically for several days. 5 days later, the two returned from their trip. Benjamin walked around the villa and felt that something was a bit off. Where are Elizabeth's things? The servant stepped forward, confused, and shook his head. Sir, we opened all the packages sent from the country, and we didn't see any feminine items. Benjamin had a sullen expression. How long is she going to make a scene? Does she need to make everyone unhappy before she is satisfied? Benjamin pulled out his phone to make a call. 3 consecutive calls went unanswered. Benjamin opened WeChat and quickly edited a message. This is your last chance, Elizabeth. Don't force me to sign the divorce. Just as he sent it, a red exclamation mark popped up. Elizabeth blocked him. The servant stood by, cautiously saying, a domestic express delivery arrived this morning, showing it was sent by the lady. What is it? Benjamin looked at her. The servant timidly took out the document and handed it to Benjamin. Divorce agreement. Benjamin looked at the same divorce agreement as 6 days ago. At this moment, he finally read through the divorce agreement carefully, looking at the items listed for division of property, from stock shares to the ownership of cars and houses. Benjamin's handsome face turned pale, and for the first time, a look of panic appeared in his eyes. The servants saw Benjamin in a bad mood and all walked into the kitchen. Just then, the mobile phone suddenly vibrated. Benjamin answered. It was an unknown call. Chairman Ren. I am MS, Lynn's divorce lawyer. You should have received the divorce agreement. If you have any dissatisfaction regarding the property division, feel free to contact me at any time. On the other end of the line, Lawyer Lee spoke officially about many things. Benjamin looked grave, his expression flustered. The woman who had loved him for 12 years, Elizabeth, was truly determined to divorce him this time. It's not just a tantrum. I really want to divorce him. Benjamin immediately had his secretary book the fastest flight back home. Beside him, Rowena's little face turned cold as she tugged at his arm. Honey, why don't we let Elizabeth calm down for a few days? Maybe if she cools off, she won't want a divorce anymore. Benjamin shook his head. I know her. Once she sets her mind on something, she will see it through. Just like back then, when he was broke, she defied her parents' advice and stubbornly married him. A man without a house or a car. It's just like when, back in the day, Elizabeth gritted her teeth to take care of an 80-year-old grandmother, handling everything from eating to drinking to personal needs. Upon hearing this, Rowena's small face clouded over with gloom. 2 days later, Benjamin returned home to City A. As soon as he entered, he asked the servant what Elizabeth had been doing these past few days. The servant shook his head, puzzled, and said, Isn't the lady traveling abroad with you? No one has been home these past few days. Benjamin called again. The voice on the other end indicated that the number had been disconnected. Damn it! Haven't I treated her well? Could she find someone better than me after the divorce? Benjamin was really panicking. He thought of something and drove to the hospital to find Fiona. As soon as he entered, he anxiously asked, Where's Elizabeth? Do you know where she went? Fiona looked at Benjamin. 2 years ago, he accompanied Elizabeth to see her, still calling her Elizabeth. Today, he opened his mouth and it was still Elizabeth. Didn't you bring your little girlfriend? Benjamin's expression changed slightly, and he said darkly, Did she tell you everything? Family shame should not be aired. Did Elizabeth really want to ruin him? Let me show you something. Fiona took out the consent form for the pregnancy termination that Elizabeth had come here for 10 days ago. Benjamin glanced at it, his hand hanging by his side clenched into a fist. She's pregnant? Why didn't she tell me? She secretly had an abortion without telling me. Doesn't she know that I have always been looking forward to the arrival of this child? Fiona suddenly understood why Elizabeth had been so resolute in terminating the pregnancy that day. The old Benjamin would have immediately felt sorry for Elizabeth and how her body would cope after the miscarriage. The current Benjamin is selfish and only cares about himself. That's something you need to ask yourself. What have you really done for her all these years? A woman has given you the best 12 years of her youth, and yet you seek other women outside. Please come back. Benjamin's face darkened. He still didn't feel that there was anything wrong with what he was doing. In this marriage, he had given Elizabeth love and money. What more could she possibly want? Before leaving, he still stubbornly asked, Where is she? Where is she now? Fiona twirled the pen in her hand, sneering slightly. If you had come back a few days earlier, I could have told you she was at her parents' house. Now, I don't even know where she is. Benjamin looked pale and tense. He didn't expect Elizabeth to be so resolute, not even telling Fiona her whereabouts. Help me pass a message to her. Suddenly, Benjamin's phone rang. On the other end of the line, he heard Rowena's choked voice. Honey, my stomach hurts a lot. Benjamin's heart tightened, and he hurriedly got up. I have to go. Fiona watched Benjamin leave in a hurry, shaking her head quietly. Meanwhile, 50 kilometers away from Lynn's father and Lynn's mother's home, Elizabeth was wearing a hard hat, directing workers to renovate the homestay. In the past few days, she fully purchased this homestay, planning to renovate it into a motorcycle theme to attract young people to stay and check in. When she received Fiona's call, Elizabeth had just finished talking with the contractor. She stepped aside, listening to Fiona talk about Benjamin coming back to find her, wanting to know where she was, while she absent-mindedly picked up her lemonade to drink. After Fiona finished speaking, Elizabeth responded with a sound of acknowledgement. Is that so? Fiona was somewhat puzzled. Why are you not reacting at all? The scumbag regrets it. Shouldn't you be happy? Elizabeth frowned. If he is willing to sign the divorce papers, then I will be happy. During this time, she reflected on her 12-year relationship with Benjamin. She still cannot understand how Benjamin managed to balance two women at the same time. Friends within the circle who know about her romantic history all say she is foolish. But she has no regrets. Having loved deeply, she does not regret it. She is just completely disappointed in Benjamin. As for Rowena, all she can say is that karma is real. It's not that retribution hasn't come. It's just that the time hasn't arrived. 2 months later, the homestay was completely renovated, and the staff had been hired. On the day of the opening, Elizabeth received a call from Fiona again. Gossip alert. Gossip alert. Benjamin and Rowena's relationship has cracks. Benjamin has turned into a devoted lover. Elizabeth lowered her gaze. What did he do this time? Haven't you seen Benjamin's social dynamics? Fiona asked. Oh, I blocked him before, Elizabeth said lightly. It turns out, Rowena had a miscarriage. A month ago, Rowena had stomach pain. Benjamin wanted to take Rowena to see a doctor, but Rowena refused to go no matter what. With no other choice, Benjamin could only call their family doctor, Dr. Sue. It is said that Dr. Sue noticed something unusual while taking the pulse, and subtly reminded Benjamin to take Rowena to the hospital. Later, there was an incident where Rowena had bleeding. Benjamin urgently took her to the hospital, only to learn that she had undergone multiple abortions and the fetus could not be saved. From that day on, Benjamin began to neglect Rowena. The 2 sentences he often said were, "In these 9 years, you haven't carried my child. Who did you have an abortion with? Tell me, do you know that because of you, Elizabeth had to terminate our child?" It was also from that time that Benjamin gradually lost interest in Rowena and began to remember the good things about Elizabeth. Once, after a fight with Rowena, he had the maid throw Rowena's belongings out of the house. Rowena collapsed in tears, suddenly bringing up Elizabeth, insulting Elizabeth in her words. Benjamin immediately flew into a rage and slapped Rowena at the front door. The next day, Rowena caused a scene again at Benjamin's front door. This time, Benjamin beat her severely, and later the neighbors could no longer stand it and called the police. Both of them were taken away by the police. At the police station, the officer asked Benjamin how a big man could beat a woman so severely. Benjamin mumbled, collapsing in tears, "She cursed my wife. She destroyed my family. My wife ran away, and I lost my child too." In the end, Benjamin was detained for 3 days. After he got out, he bought the basement where he and Elizabeth had lived when they started their business. Benjamin went to the hotel where they had previously held their wedding to have the venue redecorated. Then, he posted another message on social media seeking his wife. "He is now desperately trying to find you," Fiona complained. Elizabeth directed the staff to arrange the vases, and upon hearing this, she paused her movements. In fact, she flew back to her parents' house that day and only stayed there for 3 days. She was worried that Benjamin would come looking for her, so she went to a city not far from home and rented a homestay, hoping to spend the winter there. If it weren't for Fiona bringing up Benjamin, she actually wouldn't want to know about Benjamin's current situation. The way he is now only makes her feel disgusted. Late affection is worse than grass. Agreed. Juan. The two chatted for a while, and after Elizabeth hung up, she posted a social dynamic. Attached was a photo of the homestay's opening. A new life. A new beginning. She set it to be visible only to friends and family. Just after sending it out, someone replied instantly, "Where are you?" Elizabeth looked at this familiar nickname, her watery eyes slightly downcast. Just as she was thinking about how to reply, her mobile phone suddenly vibrated. On the other end of the microphone, a familiar yet strange male voice came through. "I'm back in the country. Where are you? I'll come find you. I've changed cities. I'm not in City A anymore." Elizabeth chatted with Santiago Lu for half an hour, and Santiago said he would go to Elizabeth's house to find her. In the evening, Elizabeth returned to her parents' home. She looked at the man in front of her, slightly taken aback. The man was 30 years old, dressed in a gray, relaxed suit, with a pair of sharp, phoenix eyes. But when he looked at her, the man's gaze would unconsciously soften. After many years apart, Santiago, When Santiago ruffled her hair like he did in their youth, Elizabeth's eyes turned red. Brother. In fact, Santiago is not her biological brother, but he is like a brother to her. When she was 6, Santiago's family moved in next door. 2 outsiders. She and Santiago were childhood sweethearts. The two were of similar age, 3 years apart, and attended the same elementary school, quickly becoming companions on their way to and from school. When he was 8 years old, Santiago's parents went abroad for business, leaving a nanny to take care of him. The nanny, relying on her age, deliberately mistreated Santiago. Once, the nanny criticized Lu's father and Lu's mother for being unreliable in front of Santiago, who could no longer tolerate it and had a heated argument with the nanny. After learning the truth, Lin's mother couldn't bear it and took Santiago back to her home. This lasted for 6 years, and when Santiago turned 17, Lu's father hoped he would go abroad to learn business from him. That same year, Santiago flew overseas. The following year, Elizabeth entered the 1st grade and met Benjamin. In fact, from the very beginning, Lin's father and Lin's mother did not support this relationship. Although Lin's family background is not considered superior, it is much better than Ren's family. Back then, if it weren't for Elizabeth's stubbornness, Lin's parents would not have agreed to her marriage. During the time when Elizabeth was accompanying Benjamin in starting a business and enduring hardships, Lin's family and Santiago privately sent money to Elizabeth. At that time, Benjamin was arrogant and refused to let Elizabeth spend any money, so Elizabeth had to endure a long period of eating plain noodles with him. Since Elizabeth got married, her contact with Santiago has gradually decreased, until recently, when Santiago learned about Elizabeth's marital troubles. He had originally planned to return to the country at the end of the year to develop the domestic market. But upon learning the news, he returned early. 13 years later, Elizabeth met Santiago again. She was so excited that she almost cried. What are your plans for the future? Santiago looked at Elizabeth in front of him. Feeling heartbroken, he was well aware of Benjamin's change of heart. Having heard all about it abroad, Elizabeth paused in her action of eating barbecue. I want to open a homestay, waiting for the divorce. As for the future, she hadn't thought it through yet. However, she wouldn't be going to City A again in the next 2 years. After all, she had been hurt the most in this relationship. Santiago stared at the downcast Elizabeth, his thin lips pressed together. The Lu family is preparing to open a branch in City A, and my work focus will be in City A for the next few years. Wait until I get on my feet, and I'll help you start a company, okay? Elizabeth jerked her head up, shaking it repeatedly. I can't do it. A few years ago, the reason Benjamin was able to succeed in his startup, a large part of the reason was that the entrepreneurial environment was good at that time. Now the overall environment is not good, and she hasn't fully recovered, so she definitely can't do it. Santiago, stroking his wine glass, slowly said, You should first practice with the homestay, and go enroll in an MBA program now. A year later, when the Lu family has established itself in City A, I'll take you along. Lin watched her conflicted daughter and advised, Your brother is right. You have the ability. Focus on your studies this year, and next year let your brother help you. By then, the marriage will be over, and your path will be much easier. Okay. Elizabeth no longer felt conflicted. She quickly enrolled in an MBA program and threw herself into her studies. The following year, she started her own business. To avoid running into Benjamin, she chose the company location near her parents' home. With Santiago's help, Elizabeth's furniture company gradually got on the right track. Another 6 months passed, and Elizabeth's business was growing larger, leading her to consider opening a second factory. Santiago chose a piece of land for her. The transaction price for this piece of land was reasonable, and there were no large furniture factories nearby, making it very suitable for Elizabeth. It's just that this piece of land is in City A. After Elizabeth learned of this, she had the thought of returning to City A to open a second factory. After communicating with Santiago, she bid farewell to her parents that night and returned to City A with her luggage. As soon as I heard Elizabeth was back, Fiona excitedly invited her to dinner. I've missed you so much. You finally came back. You have no idea. These past 2 years Benjamin has asked me about you countless times. When mentioning Benjamin, Elizabeth felt a bit dazed. Over the years, she sent countless divorce agreements and had her lawyer privately seek his signature. Benjamin refused to sign no matter what. Since the day she started her business, she referred to herself as Melissa. At the beginning of the year, when Benjamin heard about a business genius in Jiangqing, he never expected that Melissa was actually Elizabeth. Fiona couldn't help but comment, "I didn't tell him where you are. I won't deal with a scumbag who cheats." Elizabeth and Fiona chatted for an afternoon, and that night returned to the villa in City A with Santiago. In the evening, after dinner, Santiago brought out a cake. Under the dim yellow light, the man's gaze was deep, exuding a warmth. "Happy birthday, Elizabeth." "Thank you, brother." Elizabeth's eyes reddened, touched to the point of tears. In these past 2 years, if it weren't for Santiago's return to guide and support her, she wouldn't know how she would have gotten through. "Since you're back, I'll host a banquet tomorrow to publicly announce your identity." "Okay." Elizabeth did not refuse. The Liu family has a prominent reputation abroad, and in the past 2 years, they have thrived in City A. With Santiago backing her, her path has been much easier. On the other side, in Benjamin's office, Rowena went crazy again at the office door. Benjamin had the security guard drive her away. Before being driven away, Rowena mockingly shouted, "Pretending to be deep in feelings? Do you think Elizabeth wants to deal with you now? You two will never get back together in this lifetime. She's trash too. She deserves to have a miscarriage." Benjamin turned pale with anger. He said nothing, just closed the office door. Benjamin sat down again, staring at the birthday cake on his desk, which read Elizabeth Happy Birthday. He stroked the bracelet he had carefully selected a month ago. His dark eyes dim. Rowena, that miscarriage completely awakened him. Elizabeth was truly his destined partner. For the past 2 years, he had been searching for Elizabeth, but it seemed as if some obstacle was preventing him, and he had received no news. He had thought that he would gradually adapt to Elizabeth's departure. But unexpectedly, after Elizabeth left, his life and work fell into chaos for a time. At that moment, he realized that Elizabeth had been with him for 12 years, and he had become heavily dependent on her in many aspects, unable to live without her. This kind of habit cannot be easily replaced by Rowena or any other woman. He loves her even more than he imagined. The secretary knocked on the door and reported, "Liu Jia is hosting a banquet tomorrow night, and it is said that he will announce to the public that his sister Melissa is preparing to open a furniture factory in City A. Santiago wants to use this opportunity to introduce everyone to Melissa." "Chairman Ren, are you going tomorrow night?" Hearing Melissa's name, Benjamin was stunned for a few seconds. Over the past 2 years, he has heard quite a bit about Melissa. She is a highly capable woman. She can drink a lot and is very talkative. In many ways, Melissa is very similar to Elizabeth. It's a pity that she is not Elizabeth. "Let's socialize tomorrow night." "All right, Chairman Ren." The next morning, during breakfast, Santiago absent-mindedly stirred the milk in his cup. The man had a gentle demeanor, and his every gesture exuded the aura of someone in power. His gaze fell on Elizabeth beside him. "I heard he has fallen on hard times recently. He won't miss any banquet in City A. Why don't you stay out of sight tonight?" Elizabeth paused in her action of eating a sandwich and shook her head. In the 2 years since the divorce, she had fewer worries and her complexion had improved significantly compared to a few years ago. Now her face is flushed, with red lips and white teeth. "No need. Just showing up normally is fine." On the first day back to City A, she anticipated meeting Benjamin again. After all, there was no way to avoid it, so it was better to meet naturally. If she really sees Benjamin tonight, she can take this opportunity to have him sign the divorce papers. If they still can't reach an agreement this time, she is prepared to file for divorce. After all, she hadn't had the mood to deal with this matter for the past 2 years. Now that she has fully recovered, and having been separated from Benjamin for another 2 years, discussing divorce is a foregone conclusion. The banquet was held as scheduled, and Lulu gradually welcomed quite a few guests. Benjamin held a wine glass, going around to toast each person, But unlike 2 years ago, Benjamin's company profits have been declining year by year, and there were fewer and fewer people in attendance to engage with him. What everyone is talking about the most is tonight's main character, Melissa. Most of the people present are discussing Melissa's early achievements. As a woman, she is not inferior to men in the business world, has an excellent capacity for alcohol, sharp insight, and a top-notch business mind. Benjamin listened, feeling that the Melissa spoken of by many was increasingly resembling Elizabeth. The reason he was able to succeed in starting a business in his early years was largely due to Elizabeth's help. A commotion quickly arose at the door, and everyone turned to look. Santiago, dressed in a white suit, looked like a graceful young gentleman. He held the hand of a young woman with his right hand. The woman wore a white satin long dress, her hair elegantly pinned up, revealing a delicate face. Her gaze was resolute, and upon closer inspection, it revealed a sense of indifference to everything. Benjamin looked at the familiar face in front of him and felt as if the surroundings had instantly frozen. He stared unblinkingly, fixated on Elizabeth in front of him. Elizabeth walked to the center of the banquet, her face adorned with a smile, effortlessly toasting with those passing by, her gestures exuding grace. "Wife!" The surroundings fell silent in an instant. Elizabeth furrowed her brow and turned her head. Benjamin stepped forward, ready to embrace her. Santiago stepped in front of Elizabeth first, his dark eyes filled with a chilling intensity. "Mr. Ren, you have no right to lay a hand on her." Benjamin stiffened, wanting to explode, but thinking of the man before him being a Liu family member, he forcibly swallowed his anger. Elizabeth, with her watery eyes slightly lowered, not wanting to disrupt Santiago's carefully prepared banquet, said calmly, "Santiago, I want to talk to him in another place." Santiago raised an eyebrow and smirked. Did she not call him brother? In the courtyard, Elizabeth and Santiago stood together, very close to each other. The man is wearing a white suit, and the woman is in a white long dress. Both are good-looking and pleasing to the eye. Benjamin, with a grim face, stands opposite the two. He looked at Elizabeth, his dark eyes filled with deep regret. The woman before him had black hair and fair skin, red lips and white teeth, captivating and exuding a faint aura. Benjamin thought for a long time, with 1,000 words in his heart, but ultimately only said 2 sentences. "Wife, didn't we agree to go abroad together? We loved each other so much. How could you suddenly change your mind?" Santiago mockingly curled his lips. Loved each other? How could he say that out loud? Elizabeth calmly looked at him. "Because I want a divorce." From the moment he proposed to take Rowena abroad, she had wanted a divorce. At that time, upon learning that he had cheated, Rowena, who had been in love for 9 years, still tried to convince herself. 12 years of feelings. Should I give him another chance? Can't you give me another chance? Benjamin looked at Elizabeth carefully and pleadingly. No, Elizabeth said decisively. As she spoke, she thought of something and added, "If I could live my life again, I would directly refuse you when you first wrote me a love letter. I wouldn't choose to meet you. I don't want to know you." In this relationship, she truly gave 200% of her investment and effort. At that time, when she was supporting him in his entrepreneurial venture, there were indeed people around her warning her not to be too good to a man. After all, as the saying goes, the first step to getting ashore is to cut ties with the one you love. But she refused to believe it. She invested her heart and soul, betting on his sincerity. Who would have thought that he had cheated 9 years ago? This is even more hateful than his infidelity after starting the business. Benjamin's face turned pale instantly, but Elizabeth was completely indifferent, continuing with a cold expression. "So if you feel even the slightest guilt towards me, please sign the divorce agreement. There is no possibility between us anymore." After Elizabeth finished speaking, she ignored the pale-faced Benjamin and turned to walk back to the banquet hall. She still has a lot to do now. Santiago has meticulously prepared a banquet for her, and she cannot let down his intentions. Benjamin still wanted to follow. Santiago raised his hand. The security guard instantly stepped forward and politely escorted Benjamin out. The next morning, Elizabeth arrived at the office. The secretary looked at her timidly, holding a thermos lunch box in her hand. "Ms. Lin, Just now a man claiming to be your husband delivered a stew to you. Elizabeth glanced over. It was yam and pork rib soup, with fresh ginseng added. This soup was her favorite, but she didn't eat it, saying softly, "Keep it. Tomorrow when he comes, return it to him exactly as it is." The next morning, just as Elizabeth expected, Benjamin brought soup again and also sent a bouquet of pink carnations. The secretary frowned. "Mr. Lin, how should we handle this?" "Throw it away." The pink carnation is indeed her favorite flower. After 12 years of being in love, Benjamin knows her preferences inside and out. But precisely because of this, it always reminds her that while he has been good to her over the years, he has also been good to another woman. So, during Benjamin's third time delivering soup and flowers, Elizabeth had her secretary respond with a divorce agreement. A month later, at a gathering, Elizabeth encountered Benjamin again. Benjamin looked at Elizabeth with longing, pleading, "Now you don't even want the things I gave you. What can I do for you to forgive me?" Elizabeth shook her head, giving a sarcastic smile. How good had she been to him in the past to make him have such an illusion? As long as he admits his mistake, she will come back. "You don't need to give me gifts, because I will never forgive you in this lifetime. The day you cheated should have made you realize that we would end up like this. Besides, I took the initiative to leave you. You should be happy, right? Didn't I help you both?" Benjamin stared blankly at the cold-faced Elizabeth, heart feeling like it was being squeezed by a hand, pain causing his eyes to redden as he choked out, "I really know I was wrong. Elizabeth, in the 2 years you disappeared, I have thought things through. I kept in touch with Rowena over the years just to try out other women. I was just curious about other women, but in this lifetime, I have only loved you. We have been in love for 12 years. Why can't you give me a chance?" 12 years of love? The sacrifices of those years now turn into blades, stabbing at her one by one. She didn't want to remember the 12 years she foolishly devoted herself. Elizabeth furrowed her brows, her small face growing much colder. "Benjamin, ask yourself honestly, is the most important reason you want to keep me around because you know that among all the women around you, I am the only one who truly loves you? You have just become accustomed to my devotion. After all, once I leave you, you will never find another woman who loves you so selflessly in your lifetime. You may have loved me once, but you love yourself more." As Elizabeth finished speaking, Benjamin's expression turned cold. Elizabeth understood the reason for his bad mood. It was simply because she would no longer foolishly give herself to him. After Elizabeth finished speaking, she drove away. As soon as she entered the villa district, she saw Benjamin's parents standing in front of Santiago's villa from a distance. Almost simultaneously, Santiago called. On the other end of the line, Santiago's voice was chilling. "I guess they are here to confront you. They just arrived." Elizabeth's eyes turned slightly cold. "You really know how to time things well. Benjamin, you calculated my return time perfectly." Santiago paused for a few seconds, his magnetic and low-key voice exuding a sense of security. "If you don't want to see them, I can have them sent away." After a moment, he added, "They're probably here as negotiators, trying to persuade you." Elizabeth thought for a moment and shook her head. Benjamin, although his family background was not good, but during the years she had been married, the two elders had treated her quite well. Whenever they harvested good produce, they would send it to her. Whatever she liked to eat, the two elders would plant it. So, even though she has already had her lawyer prepare for the divorce proceedings, the necessary etiquette must still be observed. "Let them in. I will talk to them." Elizabeth parked the car and waited in it for 10 minutes before slowly walking into the living room. When Ren father and Ren mother saw her, they stood up excitedly. Just as Santiago had imagined, Ren father and Ren mother were indeed there to persuade her to reconcile with Benjamin. Both of them said that she and Benjamin had been in love for 12 years, knowing each other well, and that finding someone else would not guarantee the other person's character. Moreover, Benjamin is now completely out of contact with Rowena, and Elizabeth still holds 80% of the shares in Benjamin's company. Materially, Benjamin has never treated Elizabeth poorly over the years. Ren father and Ren mother looked at Elizabeth and felt it was a great pity. They also understood that given their family's circumstances, Encountering such a good girl as Elizabeth was a stroke of luck for Benjamin. If they could reconcile this time, they would also keep an eye on Benjamin's behavior. After the two elders finished speaking, Elizabeth shook her head and took out the divorce agreement. Uncle and aunt, please try to put yourselves in my shoes. If I were Benjamin and Benjamin were me, would you agree to your daughter reconciling with a man who has cheated for 9 years? In fact, over the years, she has been quite good to her father and mother. Every time the two elderly people went to the hospital for a checkup, it was arranged by her. Usually, whenever she sees good supplements, she buys them and sends them to them. Upon hearing this, Renfather and mother exchanged glances and sighed helplessly. At the entrance of the villa, Benjamin watched as his parents finally came out and hurriedly stepped forward. How was it, Mom and Dad? Did she agree? Mother handed him the divorce agreement. Benjamin's eyes dimmed as he murmured, Elizabeth is really determined to get a divorce. Father frowned and sighed deeply. Son, it is indeed your fault towards her. Elizabeth is a good girl. Why don't you just sign the divorce? Benjamin lowered his head, remaining silent. Just after sending Father and mother away, Elizabeth received a call from Lawyer Lee. Mr. Lin, the divorce lawsuit has been filed, and the specific court date will be notified. Okay, perhaps this time Elizabeth had mother bring the divorce agreement to Benjamin. She hadn't seen Benjamin for several days. She rarely has a few days of leisure. One day after work, Elizabeth and Santiago went to a hot pot restaurant and unexpectedly ran into Benjamin and Rowena. In front of a large crowd, Rowena was tugging at Benjamin's clothes, and the two were arguing about something. Suddenly, Rowena caught a glimpse of Elizabeth who was sitting by the window. She took a few steps forward, picked up the boiling red oil hot pot broth, and splashed it directly onto Elizabeth. Elizabeth, why don't you just go die? You should have bled to death from the miscarriage. Santiago quickly pulled Elizabeth into his arms. Rowena, seeing that she couldn't splash it on her, was about to turn the pot of spicy hot pot broth in another direction. Unexpectedly, she slipped and fell heavily to the ground. The spicy hot pot broth poured directly onto Rowena, causing her to scream in pain. Santiago carefully examined Elizabeth, ensuring she was unharmed before coldly looking at the fallen Rowena. Rowena, if I remember correctly, you have harmed Elizabeth multiple times before. I don't understand how a mistress like you could harbor such hatred for the legitimate wife. But since today's incident has occurred, I will help her seek justice for each of the times you harmed Elizabeth. Benjamin was stunned for a few seconds, his complex gaze falling on Elizabeth. How many times has Elizabeth been hurt? Why has Elizabeth never talked to him about it? He didn't help Rowena. Rowena stood up by herself, glaring at Elizabeth with hatred. If it weren't for you, would Benjamin have broken up with me? It's all your fault. Elizabeth calmly looked at her, a sarcastic smile playing on her lips. Blame me? Who is the one destroying my family? Did I force you to have consecutive abortions? Rowena, I'm not saying this to be mean, but even if I gave you the position of the legitimate wife, with your kind of brain, you wouldn't be able to climb up. Seeing Elizabeth openly call her stupid, Rowena was furious and wanted to curse at her. Benjamin intervened first. Enough! Stop making a scene! What exactly did you do to Elizabeth 2 years ago? Rowena avoided eye contact, feeling somewhat guilty. She's a living person. What could I possibly do to her? Isn't she standing here just fine? Elizabeth thought of the past, her body trembling uncontrollably. Santiago wrapped his arm around her shoulder, gently patting her in a comforting manner. Once Elizabeth calmed down, he looked at Rowena, a hint of coldness appearing in his dark eyes. I will investigate the matter of the gathering 2 years ago to the end. Did you harm Elizabeth? The police will decide at that time. Saying this, he cast a cold glance at Benjamin, his thin lips curling up. Mr. Ren, you don't even know what an outsider did to Elizabeth. How could you still have the face to ask for reconciliation recently? The man's aura was powerful, each word a gem. Benjamin's face was dark, not daring to say another word. Before Santiago left with Elizabeth, he instructed Secretary Fan to handle this matter. As soon as the two left, Secretary Fan arrived. I have already reported to the police regarding Rowena's intentional injury. Please cooperate with the police investigation. 20 minutes later, the police quickly arrived and took Rowena and Benjamin away. After Benjamin finished giving his statement, he went directly to the KTV from the party 2 years ago. He spent a fortune hiring someone to retrieve the surveillance footage from the corridor of the private room that day. After watching the surveillance video, Benjamin's eyes turned red, and a wave of regret flooded over him. In the video, 5 ill-intentioned men entered the private room diagonally opposite them. When Elizabeth came out of their private room, a hand reached out from the opposite room and immediately pulled Elizabeth inside. 10 minutes later, Elizabeth staggered out. Her collar was torn, her makeup was a mess, and her eyes were filled with fear and hatred. She rushed back to their private room, seemingly looking for someone to take revenge on. Half an hour later, Elizabeth came out after being scolded by him. She sadly lowered her head, tears streaming down her face. Her eyes were filled with despair and helplessness. At that moment, Benjamin recalled what Elizabeth had said when she broke down that day, and he could roughly guess what had happened. A wave of infinite regret surging in his heart. He immediately found someone to get a mobile phone and called Elizabeth. That day, the day you were almost bullied. Why didn't you tell me it was Rowena? On the other end of the line, Elizabeth was silent for a few seconds and then coldly smiled. Is it necessary? I wanted to explain to you at the time, but you didn't want to listen at all. If you really cared. Seeing my collar torn, my makeup smudged, and my body covered in bruises, couldn't you see there was a problem? Benjamin, your whole heart was with Rowena at that time. After a few sentences, Benjamin fell silent. He still wanted to say something, but the call had already been disconnected. When he called again, it showed that he had been blocked. At the police station, Rowena was ultimately detained for 5 days. On the 5th day, as she was preparing to be released, Santiago brought up the party again, and a lawsuit sent her back inside. This time, Rowena was sentenced to 6 months in prison. Before entering prison, Rowena called Elizabeth. You've ruined me, and I won't let you off the hook. In 6 months, when I get out of prison, you're dead meat. On the other end of the line, Elizabeth had just closed a big deal. This time, when provoked, there was not a trace of anger on her face. She simply said, "Come on, I want to see how you plan to harm me further." Rowena had not been in prison long when Benjamin's company faced a financial crisis. Due to his recent decision-making errors, coupled with the company's losses over the past 2 years, they were unable to pay employee salaries this month. Upon hearing this news, Benjamin did not leave the office all night. Memories of when Elizabeth accompanied him in starting the business flooded his mind. 5 years ago, he didn't know how to negotiate with clients. Elizabeth searched online for information and patiently taught him. For 3 consecutive years of failed entrepreneurship, he wouldn't let Elizabeth use any money from home. Though Elizabeth agreed verbally, she secretly bought him nutritional supplements. Regret washed over Benjamin like waves. He held his head in his hands and suddenly broke down in tears. He was truly wrong, gravely mistaken. For 2 whole months, Elizabeth hadn't seen Benjamin. On this day, Fiona invited Elizabeth for afternoon tea. She didn't know what webpage she had browsed, but suddenly exclaimed, "Oh my, Benjamin has disappeared." Elizabeth paused in her stirring of the milk tea, nonchalantly responding with a hum. No wonder she has been missing. She thought he had finally come to his senses. Fiona continued browsing the web, clicking her tongue and shaking her head in disapproval. Benjamin has been missing for 2 months. His company is facing operational issues, and the employees haven't been paid for 2 months. Now the company employees are online criticizing him, urging him to show up quickly, or they will dox him. Elizabeth blinked, a hint of disdain appearing in her watery eyes. In the evening, Elizabeth returned home to learn some shocking news. Rowena has been released on bail. When Santiago informed Elizabeth, he looked serious. "I heard it was her brother who paid for the bail. You should avoid going to the company and factory for the next few days. Just stay at home." Elizabeth lowered her gaze. Santiago understood what she meant. She was afraid of retaliation. Okay. Elizabeth didn't take it to heart. Just as she was about to go upstairs, Santiago pulled at her clothes. his dark eyes deep. Elizabeth. I am serious. You should listen. Elizabeth turned around. The man's gentle eyes were filled with concern. He stared at her without blinking, as if insisting that she agree. Elizabeth felt a pang in her heart. She softened her tone and slightly parted her pink lips. Brother. I know. Hearing brother, Santiago furrowed his thick brows. Elizabeth curled her lips. She wasn't foolish. She had long seen through Santiago's intentions, but some things had to be let him break through that layer of paper. For several consecutive days, Elizabeth hadn't gone out. In the evening, Elizabeth went out to take out the trash. She didn't notice that a man had been squatting behind the garbage bin. After she threw away the trash, she turned around, and the man picked up the spray and sprayed it behind her. Elizabeth felt her body go weak and instantly fainted. When she opened her eyes again, Elizabeth found herself tied up on the rooftop. The wind here is strong, making her feel cold all over. Rowena was sitting in front of her, legs crossed, staring at her with a sinister gaze. Since she entered prison, she looked much thinner than before, and her eyes seemed much more worn. Behind her, there was a man who looked about 70% like her. The man was wearing a plaid shirt and appeared to be much younger than her. He should be her younger brother. Awake? Rowena, seeing Elizabeth finally awake, clapped her hands. In Elizabeth's astonished gaze, she picked up the small knife from her brother's hand and walked up to Elizabeth. In the next moment, she pinched Elizabeth's chin and drew a line of blood across her face. Elizabeth, did I ever say that as long as I got out, you would be doomed? Elizabeth winced in pain, the blood from her right cheek dripping down onto her pants. She glanced around, seeing no tall buildings. This should be in the suburbs. If you let me go now, I can overlook today's incident. Heh. Rowena let out a cold laugh, pressing the blade close to Elizabeth's neck. You think I would easily let you go after you fell into my hands? How about we play a game? As she spoke, Rowena snapped her fingers. Elias picked up a live streaming stand, set up the phone, and aimed it at Elizabeth and Rowena to film. Elizabeth furrowed her brow. What do you want to do? Rowena smiled slightly, clearly pleased with Elizabeth's tense and helpless expression. I'm going live now, and you will apologize and admit your mistakes to the live stream. You will admit that you are the mistress, that you forced Benjamin to marry you and abandon me. If you agree, I will let you go after the live broadcast. How about that? Elizabeth felt a chill rise on her face as she looked at the nearly crazed woman in front of her, her expression serious. Are you crazy? How can you be so malicious? Make her live stream admitting she is the mistress. When the live stream replay is edited into clips by netizens, won't her reputation be ruined for life? Not only will her reputation be destroyed, but if she has children in the future, they might also be bullied by classmates because of the live stream clips. I can't possibly agree to that. Rowena picked up a small knife and drew a line of blood across Elizabeth's face. The blade cut through Elizabeth's delicate skin, causing her small face to crumple in pain. Yet she remained silent. If you agree, I won't do anything to you. If you don't agree, in 10 minutes I will cut your face until you do. Elizabeth's face grew serious as she stared at the frenzied Rowena. Her pink lips parted. Don't you know Benjamin is about to go bankrupt? Is it worth going crazy for a man who is about to go bankrupt? How could he possibly go bankrupt? Rowena, in disbelief, stared intently at Elizabeth. Are you trying to deceive me? Elizabeth let out a light scoff. You can search online. Rowena took out her phone and started browsing. 2 minutes later, she slapped Elizabeth across the face. Her expression twisted. It's all your fault. If it weren't for you throwing a tantrum and not going abroad, how could Benjamin possibly have returned for you? How could his company have gone bankrupt? The man I admired for so long has ended up being a worthless person. Elizabeth, it's all your fault. You, right, now, get down, on your knees. Elizabeth looked at the twisted face of Elizabeth and shook her head. I won't kneel to the mistress. All right, you really want to provoke me. Rowena opened the live stream on her phone. She picked up a knife and stabbed it directly into Elizabeth's belly. Elizabeth let out a muffled groan from the pain. Rowena's crazy action scared Elizabeth, turning her face pale, and shocked the people in the live stream. The number of viewers in the live stream quickly surged to over 10,000. Elizabeth glanced at the screen and let out a sigh of relief. She was waiting for Rowena to go live. As long as she could endure until the police arrived, she might have a chance to be rescued. Rowena was getting more and more worked up, and Elias was also watching the live stream on his phone. Seeing that some netizens have reported to the police, he felt a bit worried. "Sister, why don't we end the live stream and change locations? They have called the police." Rowena narrowed her eyes, biting her teeth. "You go first. If something happens, I will take the blame alone." "Sister, don't argue over temporary gains and losses." Elias was anxious. "You go first." Rowena still insisted, her eyes bloodshot. "I am tired of living in hiding. Today is my only chance to clear my name." She knew better than anyone the power of the internet. She couldn't let Elizabeth die physically, but today she could destroy Elizabeth mentally. She wants Elizabeth to know what kind of hell she has been living through these past few years. Elias let out a sigh, no longer persuading her, picked up his bag, and left immediately. Rowena took up a knife and walked up to Elizabeth again. As she stabbed Elizabeth, she shouted angrily, "Elizabeth, you have made my life miserable. You, the mistress who destroyed our relationship, forced Benjamin to marry you, and made me bear the shame of being a mistress. Elizabeth, why don't you just go die?" Rowena stabbed down repeatedly, leaving Elizabeth covered in blood. The people in the live broadcast room were all deceived by Rowena's acting, and began to criticize Elizabeth unanimously. Could it be that the legitimate wife is not the legitimate wife, but the mistress is the legitimate wife? Oh my God, if it weren't for suffering a great injustice, who would collapse like this and take such actions? Knowing a person's face but not their heart, this Elizabeth is really terrifying. Elizabeth narrowed her eyes, enduring the pain, and tried to untie the thick rope binding her hands, to avoid being discovered. She weakly replied to Rowena's words, "Rowena, what goes around comes around. I knew Benjamin before you did. I met him in my first year of high school, while you only got to know him in your first year of college. During his second year, who is the third party? You know better than I do." After a pause, she looked down at her bleeding abdomen, forcing herself to endure the pain. "I believe that I am not lacking in character or ability. Ever since I found out that Benjamin was keeping you, I haven't reached out to you even once. Instead, it's you who occasionally provokes me. My decision not to go abroad is because I have long lost hope in Benjamin, and Benjamin's disappointment in you is a result of your own actions. You know very well why you couldn't keep Benjamin's child." Elizabeth explained calmly and assertively that there were quite a few clear-headed people in the live stream starting to stand by Elizabeth. Even their high school classmates came forward to testify. "I was in high school with Elizabeth and Benjamin, and I can prove that Benjamin wrote more than 90 love letters to Elizabeth in freshman year. It was Benjamin who actively pursued Elizabeth. To be honest, in terms of looks, Elizabeth is much better than Rowena. If Elizabeth had met Benjamin first, then Rowena would really be terrifying." Rowena looked at the comments section, her small face twisted in anger. She collapsed and shouted, "You don't believe me, do you? I told you I'm not the mistress." Little did she know, the more she defended herself, the more people in the comments section cursed her. How terrifying her face looks. So scary. It makes me want to vomit. The legitimate wife shouldn't be like her, right? Rowena stared intently at the comments section, looking at Elizabeth on the chair. She shouted, "You explain. You explain to them." "I won't say anything." Elizabeth shook her head. She was just a little bit away from untangling the ropes. Rowena narrowed her eyes and said ominously, "Fine. If you won't speak, then I'll ruin you. If I ruin your face, you won't be able to attract any other men again. I will act on behalf of justice right now." Rowena has completely lost her mind. She picked up the knife and slashed at Elizabeth's face. Elizabeth had just untied the ropes, and she quickly dodged away. Rowena realized something was wrong and reached out to grab Elizabeth. Elizabeth lifted her leg and ran, but she was covered in blood and could barely run a few steps before Rowena was about to catch her. At that moment, a black figure rushed out. Santiago stood in front of Elizabeth. kicking Rowena with one foot and quickly wrapping Elizabeth in his arms. Elizabeth, I will take you to the hospital. The man's voice was filled with tension, worry, regret, and guilt. Elizabeth looked at Santiago before her, her eyes glistening with tears. At that moment, she finally couldn't hold back and burst into tears. It hurts, Santiago. It really hurts. Santiago narrowed his eyes viciously, looking at Rowena, who had just struggled to get up from the ground, and kicked Rowena down again. Doing this still doesn't satisfy him. He looked back at Secretary Fan. I don't hit women. You do it. Hit her to death for me. Okay, Mr. Liu. Secretary Fan nodded, cracked his neck, and squatted in front of Rowena. Rowena looked at the muscular man in front of her and fearfully stepped back. Secretary Fan clenched his fists and threw dozens of punches in just 2 minutes. He struck quickly, each punch aimed at critical areas. Rowena lay on the ground, barely conscious, looking at Elizabeth with jealousy, unwillingly saying, "Why should I? Benjamin went bankrupt, and you ended up with a man better than Benjamin? Why should I?" She just couldn't understand. What exactly makes her worse than Elizabeth? Elizabeth curled up in Santiago's arms, and Santiago wanted to hurry and take her to the hospital. But Elizabeth held his hand. "I need to talk to her for a moment." Santiago pressed his lips together. He knew Elizabeth was well aware of her own injuries. Elizabeth looked coldly at Rowena. "The biggest difference between you and me is that you always want to take advantage of others, relying on men to get ahead. The reason you could stay with Benjamin for 9 years is that you genuinely believed you would eventually rise to the top. The reason you are so devastated right now is simply because your fantasies have been shattered over the years. So, even if you risk everything today to ruin me, what you really want is to restore your own clean reputation. You are also betting that I am afraid of dying. As long as she is slightly afraid of dying, Rowena's plan for today will succeed. This time, she crazily stabbed her with a knife, but it was merely due to losing control of her emotions. After all, Rowena is a woman who wants everything, and wants it all. One word: greedy. Rowena lies on the ground as the sound of police sirens echoes from downstairs. At this moment, she cried, not because of Elizabeth, but because for a long time, she would have to spend it in prison. Santiago hurriedly carried Elizabeth downstairs. Just as they left, Benjamin arrived. He looked at the empty rooftop, a flash of unwillingness crossing his dark eyes. He was a step too late. If he had come a step earlier, would Elizabeth forgive him? Hospital. The nurse bandaged Elizabeth's wounds, while Santiago asked beside her, "Will her face be left with scars?" The young nurse looked at the handsome man in front of her. Her cheeks flushed, and she lowered her head and whispered, "There's a high probability it will leave a scar. But if you apply some scar cream or undergo cosmetic treatment, the scar will gradually fade away." Santiago furrowed his brows. He felt that the earlier hit was too light. Fortunately, Elizabeth's knife wound wasn't deep. He only feared that her face might be scarred. After treating the wound, Santiago got the medicine and drove Elizabeth home. As the black sedan was about to enter the Villa District, they saw Benjamin standing in front of the Villa District gate from a distance. He was holding a suitcase. Santiago narrowed his eyes and looked at the passenger Elizabeth. "Do you want to get out?" Elizabeth shook her head. "No, I won't get out." But unexpectedly, Santiago didn't drive straight in. He looked at Elizabeth. "Get out and make it clear with him. Cut ties with him." "Elizabeth." The man's voice was deep and magnetic. Elizabeth lowered her gaze, thought for a moment, and said, "Okay." Elizabeth had just gotten out of the car when Benjamin immediately approached with the suitcase, and Santiago stood quietly by, waiting for Elizabeth. Benjamin looked at the pale-faced woman in front of him, his heart aching terribly. "Elizabeth, I learned this afternoon that you were kidnapped by Rowena, and I rushed over, but by the time I arrived, you had already left." Elizabeth bit her lip and smiled sarcastically. "You are always late. We really aren't suited for each other." Santiago arrived so quickly because she had gone out to take out the trash. After a few minutes, Santiago didn't see her. Realizing something was wrong, Santiago immediately checked the surveillance and chased all the way to the rooftop. Whether one cares or not, The difference is actually quite significant. Benjamin turned pale. He opened the suitcase and took out a thick stack of photos. I really know I was wrong. In the past 2 months, I went back to high school to see our high school teachers. And I also visited the university to see our counselor, Elizabeth. They all think we are married with children. And the teachers hope I can bring you back to school to see them. You see. I also went to the amusement park where we had our first official date. You were only 19 then. I also went to the city where we took our first trip together. And it has already started to snow there. After a pause, Benjamin choked up and said, I walked the path we once took all by myself. And this trip has made me feel really lonely. I really know I was wrong. Didn't you always hope I would take you to see the snow? I've bought the air tickets. Shall we leave tomorrow? Benjamin choked on his words, while Elizabeth looked at him coldly and shook her head in silence. You really are quite disappointing. If you were still a man, sign the divorce agreement, and we can part ways amicably. I would still respect you as a gentleman, but in these past 2 months, which of these things have you done that actually considered me? What you've done only moved yourself. By doing this, she could only feel more grateful that leaving him was the right choice at that time. What am I supposed to do for you to forgive me? Benjamin pleaded as he looked at Elizabeth. Is it only when I die that you will forgive me? As he spoke, Benjamin pulled out a knife from somewhere and suddenly slashed at his wrist. He cut deeply, blood pouring out wildly. Elizabeth stayed frozen for a few seconds, stepping back 2 paces, shaking her head silently. You're really insane. Your company has gone bankrupt. Over the past 2 months, you haven't just been to the places we used to go. I also know you've begged many people for funding, trying to get through this crisis. Unfortunately, your credibility has long been lost. When you find yourself in a dead end, you want to place all your bets on me. You hope that after I agree to get back together, I will help you save your nearly bankrupt company. He is not only unfaithful, but he also has issues with his character. A hint of surprise flashed in Benjamin's eyes as he looked at Elizabeth. How did you know? Elizabeth pulled at her lips and continued to shake her head. I am definitely getting a divorce. We will go to court for the divorce proceedings in a week. I hope that after the divorce, I will never see you again for the rest of my life. In the past 6 months, you have exhausted all the affection we built over 12 years. As the words fell, Elizabeth looked straight at Santiago in the car. Santiago drove the car to her side and got out to open the passenger door for her. After closing the door, he looked at Benjamin, who was unwilling, desperate, and on the verge of collapse. Chairman Ren, remember to go to the hospital. If you are late and lose your life, then Elizabeth's marital status will have to be marked as widowed. Hearing Chairman Ren, Benjamin's face turned ashen. Santiago parked the car in front of the villa. After he got out of the car, he bent down to pick up Elizabeth and strode into the villa. At this hour, the servant had already gone to rest. Santiago gently placed Elizabeth on the sofa. He didn't leave, his dark eyes looking at her with an aggressive intensity. He stared at the exquisite woman before him, his thin lips slightly parted. Don't be my sister, be my wife, okay? In the dimly lit living room, the man's voice was incredibly sincere. Elizabeth's face flushed, and she felt a bit shy to meet Santiago's gaze. She lowered her head. You know I've been with Benjamin for 12 years. You may not mind now, but you will in the future. It's not your fault. Santiago held Elizabeth's hand. The girl's hands are small and soft, and they feel great to hold. His voice was low and rich. If you want to blame someone, blame me. At that time, I was only thinking about going abroad to take over my parents' business, and I planned to express my feelings to you when I returned. I didn't expect that as soon as I left, Benjamin would show up. Had I known this, I wouldn't have left back then. That year, when he learned that Benjamin had come to the Lin family, asking Lin's mother and Lin's father to support them, he couldn't sleep a wink that night abroad. At that time, if it weren't for his mother just having undergone surgery and being in poor health, he might have impulsively returned home. Later, I heard that Elizabeth was hurt and wanted a divorce. He could no longer hold back and explain to his father that he wanted to return to the country. In fact, after years of hard work, the Liu family has a large and prosperous business abroad and does not need to open a branch in the country at all. but he wanted to find a reason to go back. Elizabeth stared blankly at Santiago, unable to believe as she said, You liked me back then? Santiago lowered his head, his ears slightly flushed. During the years I stayed at Elizabeth's home, the teenage Elizabeth was poised and graceful. She calls Santiago brother. He is her only solace in the country. Fortunately, heaven has eyes and gave him another chance. Yeah, I've liked you for a long time. I really only see you as a sister. How could I not return to the country on the day you hold your wedding again? Santiago ruffled Elizabeth's head. After the wedding, the next day you and I will get our marriage certificate. Okay? I want to marry you. As he spoke, Santiago knelt down and took out a red gift box from his pocket. Santiago opened it, and inside was a 12-carat diamond ring. Will you marry me then? Okay? Elizabeth's face was flushed, like a ripe apple. He had long been plotting. Who proposes right after confessing their feelings? Santiago smiled indulgently. I'm afraid you'll run away. If you agree to marry me, I'll be able to sleep a little more soundly these days. Okay, I agree. Elizabeth blushed and nodded, speaking softly, but you need to talk to my parents about it yourself. Santiago nodded. Lin father Lin mother must know Santiago's intentions. What parents in the world wouldn't want their daughter to marry well? Elizabeth's marriage. Settling for less is one thing, but ending up like this. Lin mother hasn't had a good day in months. A week later, the divorce lawsuit was scheduled to be heard, due to Elizabeth and Benjamin being separated for 2 years, along with Rowena holding her hostage. This time, it was a direct divorce. At the moment she received the divorce certificate, Elizabeth couldn't help but tear up. Santiago held Elizabeth close, gently wiping away the tears on her face. Don't cry. It hurts my heart. This scene made Benjamin's face turn ashen. During this week, he announced his bankruptcy to the public. Once the illustrious Chairman Ren, now incredibly worn and destitute, Benjamin walked up to Elizabeth and said regretfully, If it weren't for Rowena, would we have come to this point? Elizabeth shook her head. We would still have come to this point. Without Rowena, you would just be keeping another woman. Benjamin, you really don't understand love. Benjamin looked at Elizabeth's big diamond ring, shivering all over, and said in a hoarse voice, Then invite me to your wedding when the time comes? Elizabeth shook her head, coldly refusing. No, I don't want to see you again. Santiago stepped forward and took Elizabeth's hand. I troubled Chairman Ren not to disturb my fiancé again. Otherwise, Lou is not a kind-hearted person either. The implication, if Benjamin disturbs Elizabeth again, he won't let it go. Benjamin lowered his head, watching helplessly as Santiago held Elizabeth and left. He sat in the Civil Affairs Bureau, murmuring, It's gone. Everything is gone. Money, house, company, wife, everything is gone. The next day, Santiago followed Elizabeth back to Lin's home. He had bought gifts in advance. However, the gifts he bought couldn't fit in one trunk, so he called for another car to carry the gifts. Elizabeth pressed the doorbell, and when Lin's mother opened the door, she saw Santiago and Elizabeth holding hands. She was slightly taken aback, her lips curling up. Elizabeth. Santiago, you're back. As she spoke, Lin's mother tugged at Lin's father's arm, signaling him to look. Lin's father turned to look, smiling so much that his wrinkles showed. After Santiago came in, he also brought the gifts inside. He got straight to the point and said, Madam, sir, I want to marry Elizabeth. The betrothal gift here will be 5 million, and all the cars and houses under my name will be transferred to Elizabeth's name. If you think that's not enough, I can add more. Lin mother and Lin father exchanged glances, their faces filled with smiles. That's enough. As long as Elizabeth likes you, we won't interfere in your matters. The way this kid looks at Elizabeth is like a thread being pulled. How could Lin mother not see it? I just didn't expect Santiago to come to propose so soon. It seems he couldn't wait any longer. I want to go get the marriage certificate with Elizabeth today. Lin nodded her head. All right. You are good kids. As long as you have discussed it well. After obtaining the consent of the 2 elders, Santiago and Elizabeth got their marriage certificate in the afternoon. Santiago looked at the marriage certificate and finally felt at ease. Elizabeth, let's hold the wedding in a month, okay? Don't you want to go abroad to see the snow? After the wedding, we will go abroad for our honeymoon. Elizabeth blinked, a bit worried. Will Benjamin come to disrupt the wedding? After all, he might really do something like that. Santiago narrowed his eyes. I have it under control. Just leave the wedding to me. Just as Elizabeth expected, her mobile phone has been receiving strange messages these days. These unfamiliar numbers all send the same content. Elizabeth, I want to attend your wedding. Elizabeth really had no choice but to set her text messages to do not disturb. And Rowena was imprisoned again. She was sentenced to 7 years for kidnapping. Her brother Elias was also sentenced to 2 years in prison. Half a month later, after taking her wedding photos, Elizabeth asked someone to help her visit Rowena in prison. She thoughtfully prepared wedding candy. Rowena glanced at Elizabeth. Her watery eyes filled with a hint of malice. Elizabeth raised her hand, showing her the diamond ring. Rowena, I am living the life you wished for. Rowena stared at her fiercely, venomously saying, so what? You're on your second marriage, and it will end in betrayal just like the first, ultimately falling apart. As she spoke, she scoffed. Which man in this world would be content with only one woman? Santiago stood behind Elizabeth, frowning. I won't let Elizabeth be unhappy. Being able to marry her makes my life complete. Rowena, the men you encounter are all too base, only indulging in physical pleasures. When you understand what a spiritual partner is, you will realize. He paused for a moment and chuckled softly. However, you may never understand what a spiritual partner is in this lifetime. Elizabeth looked at the man beside her, who usually spoke very little. Today, it was entirely because of him that she had said so much. Rowena's eyes were bloodshot, and she wanted to say something more, but after thinking for a long time, she couldn't come up with anything, and Elizabeth's wedding candy only deepened her wounds, leaving her utterly devastated. Meanwhile, a small rental apartment. After declaring bankruptcy, Benjamin rented a small room with the only remaining 20,000 yuan. At first, he planned to make a comeback, but his reputation in City A was basically ruined, and no one wanted to help him. Later, Benjamin learned from somewhere that Elizabeth was going to have a wedding with Santiago. He began to inquire everywhere about where Elizabeth and Santiago were getting married, preparing for a thorough revenge. Half a month later, at a grand restaurant in the city center, Elizabeth stood at the entrance, welcoming friends and family attending the wedding. She wore a red welcoming outfit and stood together with Santiago. The two of them were exceptionally good-looking, like a golden boy and a jade girl, particularly pleasing to the eye. The wedding will start in half an hour. Santiago looked at Elizabeth's high heels and asked, "Are you tired standing in high heels?" Elizabeth shook her head and gave him a sweet smile. Not tired. Very happy. Lu father Lu mother looked at their daughter-in-law in front of them, extremely satisfied. Elizabeth grew up under their watch, and she is a very kind girl. The Lu family is not short of money, and they actually hoped that Elizabeth would become their daughter-in-law. Now, the wish has finally come true. Meanwhile, in the hotel underground parking lot, Benjamin, fully armed, wearing a mask and hat, sneaks into the underground parking lot. He holds a packet of powder in his hand and turns to enter the elevator. Half an hour later, the host takes the stage, and the wedding officially begins. Lin leads Elizabeth step by step to Santiago, handing Elizabeth over to Santiago. After the two give their speeches and finish the ceremonial drink, the dishes begin to be served. The big screen starts playing Elizabeth and Santiago's wedding photos, and Elizabeth and Santiago toast one by one. As the guests were enjoying their meal, they suddenly clutched their stomachs and began to wail in pain. This scene startled Elizabeth and Santiago. "What's going on?" Santiago asked the hotel manager. The hotel manager seemed to think of something and picked up the phone to call the police. "I suspect someone has poisoned the food." Elizabeth nervously looked at Santiago. "Is it possible that it was Benjamin?" Santiago asked the hotel manager to pull up today's surveillance footage to see if Benjamin had been to the hotel. The police arrived at the scene quickly. The five of them watched the surveillance footage and soon identified Benjamin coming up from the underground parking lot, sneaking into the kitchen, and poisoning the food. The police acted very quickly. Half an hour later, they had brought back Benjamin, who was preparing to board a plane, with solid evidence and the poisoning of 60 people. The police coldly informed Benjamin that he might face a long prison sentence. Benjamin's legs went weak. He shook his head repeatedly and explained, "No, I didn't put poison in all the dishes. I only poisoned the dish at the main seat. But that wasn't poison. It was just a strong laxative." He wasn't that foolish. He had consulted a lawyer. Group poisoning would lead to a long prison sentence. But he only harms Lynn's family and Lou's family, wanting to make them look bad when the time comes. If he really gets caught, he would only serve at most 6 months in prison. He can make this deal. Lynn's mother was so angry that she couldn't help but slap him. "Benjamin, it really is you. Over the years, I thought I treated you well, but you actually dared to do something like this." Lynn's father's face was dark. "We shouldn't have agreed to let Elizabeth marry you in the first place. Otherwise, there wouldn't have been so many troubles." Benjamin let out a cold laugh, no longer pretending, and shouted, "Yes, yes, yes. You have looked down on me from the very beginning. You just despise the poor and love the rich, wanting to climb up the Lou family's high branch. If I had Santiago's status, would you still dare to treat me this way?" Pausing for a moment, he pointed at Elizabeth, who was wearing a wedding dress. "Why have I accompanied you for 12 years, yet you won't even give me a single chance? Don't you just know that Santiago likes you and want to find someone better? You are just like your parents, both people who despise the poor and love the rich." As soon as she finished speaking, Elizabeth slapped Benjamin across the face. "Do I only love the rich? Who was it that stayed with you in the basement for 3 years? Benjamin, you still don't realize your mistake. Your biggest problem is that you always think you are right. Have I not given you a chance? It's you who didn't cherish it." The first time he proposed to take Rowena abroad to settle down, she endured it. The second time, she also endured it. Isn't this still giving a chance? Santiago shook his head. His handsome face darkened. "You will never know what you have wasted is a true heart." In the end, Benjamin still went to prison. However, in the end, he was only sentenced to a month in prison, because at the main table, there wasn't a single person who fell for it. At that time, Santiago learned that Benjamin had been planning to use the wedding to take revenge on Elizabeth. He then came up with an idea. Why not release false information to the public, deliberately luring Benjamin over, as if it were a rehearsal? Unexpectedly, Benjamin actually showed up. He was very clever, bringing a strong laxative, and only drugged one table to avoid serious charges. The next day, Elizabeth and Fiona had afternoon tea. Upon learning that Benjamin was only in for a month, Fiona felt it was a pity. What a pity! He should be made to serve 10 or 8 years. Elizabeth took a sip of tea, and she smiled faintly. "I feel the same way, but my husband doesn't think so." "Husband?" Fiona clicked her tongue, her expression exaggerated. "Look at your current state. It's so much better than before. In your last marriage, Benjamin was the one taking from you. In this marriage, Santiago is nourishing you." However, what Santiago thinks, logically speaking, he can't just let Benjamin off the hook like that. Elizabeth curled her lips. "From the very beginning, we never intended to let Benjamin serve a long sentence. Santiago has already contacted Ren's father and Ren's mother, and both elders have agreed that once he finishes his prison sentence, he will be sent to a mental hospital. This is the true purpose of Santiago establishing the wedding bureau. Although there are no charges, this can be used as leverage to send Benjamin to a mental hospital for a couple of years." Fiona furrowed her brow and said in confusion, "His parents actually agreed? No way." Elizabeth smiled faintly and shook her head secretly. "Ren's mother just got pregnant, and it's highly likely to be a son. The older one has already been spoiled, so she decided to raise the younger one. As for their agreement to send Benjamin to the psychiatric hospital, it was also negotiated with Santiago. The most important thing is that Benjamin completely meets the symptoms of NPD." Fiona instantly understood. Ren father and Ren mother are also aware of the situation. When it comes to interests, as long as the stakes are high enough, most will accept. A month later, Benjamin was released from prison. On the same day, he was sent to the psychiatric hospital. He lay on the hospital bed, his hands bound, murmuring, "Let me out. I'm not sick. Dad, Mom, let me out." Another week passed, and the wedding, postponed for over a month, finally took place. Santiago was extravagant, booking the most luxurious hotel in the city. All the food, drinks, and favors were top-notch. Lou father and Lou mother were even more generous, directly giving $1 million as a settlement fee. Fiona sat in the audience, watching Elizabeth happily drink from the cup with Santiago, her eyes reddening. When Elizabeth went around the tables to toast, Fiona cried uncontrollably. "Woo-woo, Elizabeth. You must be well. If you get pregnant, you still have to come to me for prenatal checkups, and you are not allowed to see anyone else." Elizabeth let out a chuckle. All right. I will come to you for the prenatal checkup then." In the evening, Santiago held Elizabeth's hand as they walked into the wedding room. Under the dim light, Santiago kissed Elizabeth's lips. "Elizabeth, if you marry me, I promise you a lifetime of happiness." In the future, he would not let her shed a single tear.